There is a kind of silence that does not comfort you. It crawls under your skin and whispers that no one is coming to save you. That was the silence waiting for me when the wheels of my chair crossed the threshold of my own house on an October afternoon, after 21 days locked in a hospital, learning to breathe again without screaming. 21 days. 3 weeks before that, I still stood on my own 2 legs. I walked among the coffee plants at dawn, the dew wetting my ankles, and spoke to them as if they were my daughters. Until that morning. Until the blade of the brush cutter bit into something that had no business being buried in the grass. Something iron hard set there on purpose, and the world became a white explosion of metal and pain. But I will tell you about that later, because what truly broke me was not the splintered bone under the cast. It was what waited for me inside the house. My name is Phyllis Hollowell. I am 67 years old. I have a coffee farm that my husband Walter and I raised row by row when we were young and afraid of nothing, and a heart that on that afternoon still believed naively that family was the one place where an old woman could not be hurt. If this story reaches your soul, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and tell me down below which city you are keeping me company from. Now let us continue. Brenda pushed my chair slowly as if I were made of glass. Brenda kept the house 48 years old quiet, with big hands and a kind face. We had hired her a little over a year ago, and I will come back to the detail of who insisted on bringing her in, because that detail ended up weighing more than any deed of property. For now it is enough to say that it was she and no one of my own blood who rode 2 hours on a bus to the hospital, so that I would not come home alone. "We're here, Miss Phyllis," she murmured, and her voice trembled a little as if she sensed something I did not yet. The house smelled different, of closed windows, of reheated food, of a sweet perfume that was not mine. I crossed the living room with my eyes, and something gripped my chest before I understood what it was. The corner by the window where for 40 years the statue of the Virgin had stood, my Virgin, the one Walter gave me on our wedding day, the one who watched over my sleepless nights, was empty. The little shelf bare, the embroidered cloth folded to one side like any old rag. "Where is the Virgin?" I asked. Brenda opened her mouth, but she did not get the chance to answer, because at that moment, Delaney came down. My daughter-in-law descended the stairs without hurry, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel, looking at me the way you look at an old piece of furniture that gets in your way. 33 years old, pretty, with that cold beauty that learns early how to be used as a weapon. In her arm, she carried the baby asleep. Behind her, clinging to her skirt, peeked the little face of Maddie, my oldest grandchild, 5 years old, with enormous eyes that searched for me with a joy her mother put out at once. "Oh, so they brought her back," Delaney said. "Not welcome, not how are you feeling. Only so they brought her back the way you receive a parcel you never ordered." "Grandma," Maddie whispered and took a step toward me. "Stay there." Delaney cut in without raising her voice, and the child froze. "Your grandmother is tired. Don't pester her." I wanted to tell my granddaughter to come to climb into my lap even if my thigh ached, but I swallowed the words. You learn at my age to measure the air of a house before you breathe it in. And the air of mine that afternoon was thick with something I could not yet name, but that my body already recognized as danger. "Delaney," I said with all the calm I had left, "where is the Virgin?" She was on her shelf. She tilted her head, pretending to think. "Oh, that. I put it away. It took up space and gathered dust." She shrugged. "You're old enough to stop talking to a piece of plaster, don't you think? If God were going to help you, he'd have done it already. Look at you. Look at how you ended up." I felt the blow land clean exactly where it hurt most. I did not answer. I dropped my eyes to my hands, those hands that had gathered 40 harvests, and ordered myself not to cry in front of her. Brenda tried to push my chair toward the hallway to get me out of there, but Delaney stepped into the way. "Wait, before you settle in like a queen, let's talk numbers." She shifted the baby to her other arm. Your son sends a pittance from the city. A pittance. 2 children to feed the house the medicine, and you think what Cody sends is enough. It isn't. You've got the farm, you've got the savings sitting in the bank growing mold. It's time this family got organized for real. I need you to sign some papers, for everyone's good. There it was again. The same old refrain she had been repeating for months. The farm, the savings, the deed, a signature for everyone's good. I had always said no. Not out of greed. God knows I would have given my son and grandchildren the last grain of coffee on this land, but because something deep inside me screamed that behind all that insistence there was no love but something else. We'll have this conversation another day, I said. I just got out of the hospital. It's always another day with you. Delaney's voice sharpened. You know what, I'm sick of it. Sick of carrying everything alone while the lady plays the victim in her wheelchair. And then she did it. She shoved the baby into Brenda's arms, leaned over my chair, and with both hands tipped it on its side. It was no accident. I saw it in her eyes. She decided it. The world spun. The cast struck the edge of the table, and I fell to the floor of my own living room, the way a sack of coffee falls off the truck, all at once without dignity, with a scream that tore out of me when my weight crushed the broken leg. There you go, she said, standing over me, looking down. Get up by yourself if you think you're so strong. Useless old woman. Old cripple. Brenda cried out. Maddie burst into tears. And I sprawled on the cold tiles, my cheek pressed to the floor I myself had mopped. 1,000 times felt something break inside me far deeper than any bone. It was the certainty, sudden and freezing, that the woman who slept under my roof and carried my grandchildren in her arms hated me. Hated me truly. Brenda set the baby on the sofa and knelt at my side, trying to lift me, whispering, I'm sorry, Miss Phyllis, as if the fault were hers. Call Cody. I told her, my voice in pieces. I already tried, ma'am, she murmured. From the hospital I tried. The number I have it doesn't answer. Delaney says your son is very busy in the city, that we shouldn't bother him. Very busy, my son. The same little boy who used to hide behind my legs when it thundered, who promised he would take care of me when I grew old. So busy he did not even know his mother had come home from the hospital, or so deceived that he believed his mother was fine. I lay there a long moment before they lifted me, and in that moment something strange happened. The pain in my thigh was enormous, white, blinding, and yet it was not the pain I noticed most. What I noticed was the cold of the tiles against my cheek, and the small, specific sound of Delaney's slippers walking away from me, unhurried toward the kitchen, as if a 67-year-old woman lying broken on the floor were no more remarkable than a spilled glass of water. She did not look back. That was what told me everything. Not the cruelty of the shove, but the indifference of the walking away. Something did not fit. It had not fit for weeks. That night when the house fell asleep, I lay staring at the ceiling in the dark. My whole body hurt, but what hurt more was the question that would not let me close my eyes. I know my farm the way I know the wrinkles on my hands. I know my workers, and I know they would never leave an iron bar lying hidden in the tall grass right in the strip I clear every morning at dawn. That bar did not get there on its own. Someone put it there, and as the pain throbbed beneath the cast like a second heart, a cold idea opened its way through my head, so clear it frightened me. My accident was no accident. I did not sleep. When at last the first gray light filtered into the room, I had already decided I needed to go back to the coffee field. I needed to see with my own eyes the place where the ground had opened up beneath my life. We waited for Delaney to go out. She went out almost every morning dressed with a care that did not match a woman shut up caring for 2 children and an invalid mother-in-law. She painted her lips, perfumed herself, and left to run errands for hours. The moment the gate closed behind her, Brenda wrapped me in a shawl, carried the baby in a sling, took Maddie by the hand, and pushed my chair down the dirt path toward the coffee plants. The road I had walked 10,000 times on my own 2 feet I now crossed sitting down. Everything looked different from below. Bigger. More foreign. The wheels jammed in the furrows, and Brenda had to push with her whole body, apologizing every time a jolt pulled a moan out of me. We reached the lower strip, and there it was. The yellow plastic tape one of the workers had tied between two coffee plants to mark the spot. The trampled grass. And my brush cutter leaning against a trunk, the blade twisted, nicked with a piece of the edge torn clean off. I had bought that machine 3 harvests ago. I knew it. A blade like that does not get nicked cutting grass. It gets nicked when it strikes iron. "Push me up to the machine," I told Brenda. I leaned over and ran my fingers along the broken edge. Cold, jagged, brutal. And then in the weeds, less than a yard away, I saw it half buried, deliberately covered with a heap of dry grass, the tip of an iron bar. A steel bar, the kind we use to dig planting holes and move the big stones. Heavy, solid, impossible not to see if you left it where tools are left standing against the shed wall, never on the ground, and far less hidden in the middle of a cutting strip. My blood ran cold. Not because I found it, because someone had covered it. "Miss Phyllis." The voice came from behind me, low, trembling. It was a young man. Thin, he could not have been more than 19, with his hat crushed between his hands. Tyler, the new hand, the one who had started a couple of months back, the one the others scolded because he worked slowly. A country boy raised to obey and never to contradict the people who paid him. "What is it, Tyler?" He swallowed. He looked toward the gate as if afraid someone might appear. Ma'am, I haven't been able to sleep since it happened. Everyone keeps saying it was somebody's fault who left the bar lying around, and they all blame each other. And I keep quiet. And I can't keep quiet anymore." I felt my heart stop for a second. "Speak, son." Slowly. "What did you see?" He crouched in front of my chair and raised his eyes. They were red. "The evening before your accident, I stayed late. The others left at 5, but I hadn't finished my row. It was getting dark. I was up on the rise gathering my things, and from up there I saw her." "Saw who?" He dropped his voice almost to a whisper. "Miss Delaney." The name fell on me like a stone to the bottom of a well. "Go on." She thought everyone had gone. She walked down to this strip, looking all around nervous. She was dragging something heavy. It was the bar, Miss Phyllis. She took it from the shed. I saw her push it in here into the tall grass right in your path and throw dry straw over it to hide it. He was shaking all over. "I got scared, ma'am. She's the owner's daughter-in-law. Who am I, a new hand, to accuse the boss's family? I thought they'd throw me out. So I kept quiet. And the next morning I heard the screams, and I knew what my silence had done." He broke into tears, his hat pressed against his chest. "Forgive me. If I'd taken that bar away, you'd still have your good leg." And I, who had come looking for a suspicion and was leaving with a certainty, felt the whole world rearrange itself in silence. Every piece found its place with a cold click. Delaney's insistence about the farm, her barely concealed hatred, the overturned chair, the hidden virgin. If God were going to help you, he'd have done it already. My son unreachable in the city. And now this, my daughter-in-law in secret, burying a piece of iron in the one place in the world where she knew I would pass at dawn. I thought of all the mornings I had walked that strip without suspicion, humming to myself, greeting the plants by name. I thought of how on the morning it happened, I had very nearly taken the upper path instead, and how if I had, the bar would have waited for me the next day or the day after, patient as a snake, until I finally stepped where she wanted me to step. That was the part that froze me most. Not that she had done it once in a moment of rage, but that she had been willing to leave the trap there day after day, knowing it would take whatever morning it took. It was no accident. It never was. It was an ambush thought out, measured, carried out with the coldness of someone who had already decided I was in the way. I did not cry. I took the boy's hand between mine and squeezed it hard. Look at me, Tyler, it was not your fault. You were afraid, and the fear of a poor young man in front of the people who pay him is not a sin. The fault belongs to whoever buried the iron. I waited until he met my eyes. You're going to repair your silence the only way that matters, by telling the truth when the moment comes. Could you repeat in front of whoever has to hear it everything you just told me? He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Something changed in his eyes. Anything, Miss Phyllis. Wherever. I swear it on my mother. A few feet away, Brenda watched with her hand over her mouth, white as paper. She had heard it all. Maddie came close and rested her little head on my arm. I stroked her hair. And while my granddaughter sought comfort without knowing her own mother was the monster of this tale, I made myself a single promise. I was not going to cry anymore. I was going to understand piece by piece, name by name, all the way to the bottom. Because one thing I had learned that morning among my broken coffee plants, you can take a leg from a woman. You can take her faith, her money, even her respect. But the day you take away her fear, you are left with nothing to control her with. And I that morning stopped being afraid. I did not go straight into the house. I asked Brenda to leave me a moment under the eaves. I needed to decide what kind of woman I was going to be from here on, the victim who drags herself along, or the other one only just beginning to wake inside me. Brenda, sit. I need you to tell me everything you saw while I was in the hospital. She dragged a little wooden stool over and sat wringing her apron. The Virgin, she began. Miss Delaney didn't put it away because it gathered dust. That's a lie. It was 3 days after your accident. She walked into the living room, lifted the Virgin off the altar, and carried it to the shed out back into the darkest corner. I asked her why, and she said... Brenda faltered. She said so the old woman finally understands that her God isn't going to save her, that nobody is going to save her. I closed my eyes. Nobody is going to save her. It was not an outburst. It was a sentence. The voice of someone who had already decided my fate. What else did you see? She told me the small things, the ones that alone seem like nothing, and together draw a monster. That Delaney went through my drawers when she thought no one watched. That she had turned my room upside down, looking for papers that deed the bank book, and had not found them, because I kept what mattered in a place not even my own shadow knew. And that a man came to the house. A man who was not family and was not from town. I straightened in the chair. A man what man? A gentleman from the city, well dressed with a good car. He came when she sent me off to shop far away so I wouldn't be here. But one day I came back early and saw them in the kitchen, talking low, very close. He had his hand on her waist. Brenda dropped her eyes. She told me he was a debt collector. But Miss Phyllis, you don't put your hand on a debt collector's waist. My stomach turned over. Cody far away. Delaney perfumed gone for hours. A man with a good car coming into my house when there were no witnesses. The pieces were on the table, waiting for me to have the courage to put them together. There's something else, ma'am. Brenda went on lower now. These last months she changed everything in this house, little by little, so slowly you'd hardly notice. She stopped letting the neighbors in, said you were too tired for visits. She told the man from the parish you didn't want communion brought to the house anymore. Old Mrs. Tilford came by twice to see you, and Delaney turned her away at the gate, said you were sleeping. I watched it happen, ma'am. One thread at a time, and I didn't understand what she was weaving until you came home in that chair. She was cutting you off. From the neighbors, from the church, from your son. Making it so that if anything happened to you, there'd be no one left who'd think to ask a question. The cold that went through me then was different from the others. Because Brenda was right, and I had been too trusting to see it. A person does not isolate an old woman by force. They do it kindly with concern in their voice, one small mercy at a time, until one day she looks up and finds that every door she might have knocked on has been quietly closed from the outside. "And my son?" I asked, hating the hope that slipped into my voice. "Has Cody called?" Brenda pressed her lips together. That's the part that hurts me most. From the hospital, I dialed the number I had. Nothing. Then I asked Miss Delaney for the new one, and she gave me a number that never answered once it said the number didn't exist. And here's the thing, she never lets you call him yourself. She always says I'll call him for you, and does it from her own phone, handing it over only when she's already talking. You never dial. I think she gives you a false number, and to your son, she tells a different story than the one she tells us. There it was, the crack through which all the darkness was seeping in. Because then I remembered Delaney's words, "Your son sends a pittance." She had said it as a reproach, but now those words turned inside out like a glove. What if my son did send money, a great deal of it breaking his back in the city, and that woman hid it from me while telling Cody I was a greedy old woman who would not help her own grandchildren, 2 versions, 1 for each side, and in the middle her working the strings, making sure my son and I never compared the 2 stories. "Brenda, take me to the shed. I want my virgin back. That woman thought that by hiding her she was taking my God away from me. My faith doesn't live in plaster, but the statue is mine. Walter gave it to me, and I want it back in its place. Today, before she gets home." She left the baby asleep, asked Maddie to stay where we could see her, and pushed my chair to the shed out back. The door creaked. Inside it smelled of dry earth and damp. And there was my virgin lying on her side on a sack, her blue mantle covered in dust, her crown tilted facing the wall as if punished for a crime she did not commit. To see her like that hurt me more than the leg, more than the fall, more than all of Delaney's words together. "Bring me close. I want to lift her myself." I took her between my hands, cleaned her with my sleeve, set her crown straight. And as I moved her, something slid out from where she had rested. She had been set on top of an old metal box. Walter's box. His strong box, gray and dented, the one he kept under the workbench for 30 years with a dial lock he used to spin with his thumb while he whistled. Delaney must have found it and thought it the safest place in the world to hide something, a locked box in the darkest corner of a shed no one entered. What she could not know was that I still remembered the combination. The day of our wedding turned into numbers the way Walter said it the night he brought it home laughing, telling me a man should keep what he loves where only his wife can find it. What had slid out was a thick manila envelope wedged against the box. I reached for the dial with stiff fingers and turned it. Right, left, right. The wedding date. The little lock gave a soft click I felt in my teeth. I lifted the lid just enough to see the envelope on the floor was not the only one inside. Beneath a folded cloth were more papers, the corner of a blue bank book, the cold shape of documents. I closed it again. "Take me inside, and not a word of this, to anyone." I set the Virgin again on her shelf, straightened her crown, and for a moment, seeing her in her place, I felt something close to peace. A small piece, fragile, but mine. Delaney had believed that by hiding a plaster statue she could put out my faith. Poor woman. She did not understand that there are things you cannot hide in a shed, and that some of the things she had hidden were about to come back into the light, one by one, in an order she would not get to choose. The envelope I hid inside the case of my old pillow, sewn shut along one side with the same needle I had used to mend Cody's clothes when he was a boy. I would open it that night. First, I needed another piece. And that piece, without my looking for it, was brought to me by a little 5-year-old voice. It was at midday. Maddie played on the floor with her rag dolls near my chair. She sat her 2 dolls facing each other and began to make them talk, repeating, without knowing it, what she hears at home. "You stay here," she told one doll in a commanding voice, imitating someone. "I'm going to see Uncle Dwayne. Be good, and don't tell Daddy anything." I turned to Ice. I pretended to keep looking out the window. "Maddie, I said in the sweetest voice I could manufacture. "Who is Uncle Dwayne, my love?" The child lifted her head with the clean innocence of her age. "Mommy's friend. He comes when Daddy isn't here. He brings chocolates." She went back to her dolls. "But it's a secret, Grandma. Mommy says if I tell Daddy, Santa won't bring me anything. So don't tell, okay?" "I won't tell, sweetheart," I murmured, and I felt the floor open slowly beneath my chair. Dwayne, the man with the good car, the debt collector, the friend who came when my son was away and bought the little one chocolates to seal her silence. He was no collector. He was the lover. And my daughter-in-law had turned her own 5-year-old daughter into an accomplice, teaching her to lie to her father under the threat of a Santa Claus who would bring no gifts. Then I began to understand the true shape of the trap. It was not only money, it was everything. Cody had not gone to the city of his own free will. When he and Delaney married and the first pregnancy came, my son could not hold the house together, and I, who had the farm and the savings, offered help with my heart in my hand. But Delaney would not have it. And there was the cunning. She played the dignified one, the model daughter-in-law. "No, Miss Phyllis, we won't take from you what cost you so much. Cody will go to the city where the pay is better, and we'll manage on our own." How humble she seemed. And I, fool that I was even touched. Now I saw the whole play. Sending Cody far away was not pride. It was clearing the ground. With my son hours away, the house was left free. Free for Dwayne. Free to search my drawers. Free to weave with a spider's patience the plan to keep everything Walter and I had raised. That afternoon, when Delaney came back, perfumed a grocery bag with barely 2 things in it, as if the bag were only an alibi, I received her with a calm that must have unsettled her. I made no accusation. I had learned that whoever shows their cards too soon loses the hand. I let her feel safe. Because a woman who feels safe makes mistakes, and I needed her to make every mistake she had left. "Did you think about the papers, Miss Phyllis? We don't have all the time in the world." "I'm thinking about it, Delaney," I answered, lowering my head with a feigned meekness that cost me every muscle in my face. "Give me a few days." She smiled the smile of a cat that thinks it has the mouse cornered. "I'm glad you're finally coming to your senses. It's the best thing for everyone." That night when the house slept, I drew the envelope from the pillowcase and opened it under the lamp. Inside were papers. Several, and as I unfolded them, my heart shrank page by page. I did not understand all of it. There were legal terms that escaped me, but I understood enough to freeze my blood. I thought of Walter. I spoke to him under my breath the way I did when he was alive, and we sat under the eaves to watch the evening fall. "Old man, into whose hands did I leave our son?" And I swear that in the silence of that night, I felt the answer come from inside me. "You're still here, Phyllis. They took the leg, not the head. They took your trust, not your cunning. Get up even if it's sitting down. You raised this house, and nobody is going to take it from you while you have breath left." I dried my tears. They were the last I intended to spend on weeping. And in the dark, with my eyes open, I began to do what a woman who 40 years earlier had pulled a farm out of nothing knew best. I began to plan. The days that followed, I lived with a mask on. From the outside, the same beaten old woman, quiet, obedient, asking permission even to go to the bathroom. From the inside, a woman who counted and stored. When Delaney came into the room, I let my shoulders drop. I sighed. I stared into the void like an old woman who had given up. And she, more careless every day, began to talk in front of me as if I were furniture. That was exactly what I wanted. It was harder than I had imagined. There is a particular kind of exhaustion in pretending to be defeated by the very person you are about to defeat. Every yes Delaney was a small swallowing of poison. There were nights I lay awake asking myself whether a woman my age with one leg gone had any business playing this game at all, whether I should simply have called the police that first week, shown them the bar, and let them sort it out. But I knew better. I had heard her voice when she said nobody is going to save her. I had seen how carefully she forged my hand. A woman like that does not lose to suspicions in a frightened farmhand's word. She loses to proof ordered, dated, signed, impossible to twist. And to gather that proof, I needed time, and to buy that time, I needed the mask. So I kept it on. I wore it the way I had once worn my work clothes, because the harvest does not care whether you are tired. That week, what filled my head was my son. I needed to speak with the real Cody, not the unreachable ghost Delaney managed at her whim. And for that, I needed a phone she did not control. It was Tyler who gave it to me. One morning I asked him to lend me his cell phone and to find out through the other workers whether anyone had my son's new number. The foreman had it. Cody had left it months back in case of an emergency on the farm. I waited for Delaney to leave. Brenda kept watch at the window, and with my heart pounding in my throat, I dialed. My finger hovered over the last digit longer than it should have, because some part of me was afraid not that he wouldn't answer, but that he would, and that his voice would be cold, that the woman's poison had already done its work and turned my own son into a stranger. I pressed the digit anyway. It rang 3 times, and then a voice. Hello. It was him. With that one word, my eyes filled. Cody, it's your mother. A long silence. Too long. Mom? Why are you calling from a number I don't know? I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Weeks, Mom, I call you every Sunday. I talk to Delaney. She tells me you're fine resting, that you don't want me bothering you with so many calls. Last week I sent you my love through her. Didn't she give it to you? I closed my eyes. There it was, the crack opening all the way. Cody, I need you to listen without interrupting, and to believe me, even though what I'm about to tell you looks nothing like what you've been told. And I told him the essential not Dwayne that was a wound a man must discover another way, that 3 weeks ago I'd had an accident, that I had lost the use of a leg, that I was in a wheelchair, that I had spent 21 days in the hospital. What his voice broke. 3 weeks in the hospital, Delaney didn't tell me anything. I asked her about you on Sunday, and she said you were out in the yard tending your plants. I wasn't tending plants, son. I was learning to live without a leg alone while your wife told me you didn't want to hear from me. That I didn't. Mom, I send her money every month, almost everything I earn for the house, for the kids, for whatever you need. I keep just enough to eat. She tells me it still isn't enough, that you cling to the money and the farm and won't let go of $1 for your own grandchildren. That you're resentful, that you don't want to see me. And then I understood it completely. The 2 truths, the single lie in the middle. To me, your son sends a pittance. He doesn't care. To him, your mother is a greedy old woman. She's resentful. 2 perfect stories, one for each side of the wall she had built between us. And the money my son tore out of his own mouth went not to the house, not to the medicine, but to the painted nails, the sweet perfume, the good car of the man who came when he was away. Delaney had not only stolen money, she had stolen us from each other, poisoned my son's love for his mother, and my trust in my son, set us to hate each other in silence with the oldest weapon of all, making sure we never compared our versions. Cody, did you sign any paper Delaney sent you? Anything about the farm, the bank, the house? A guilty silence. Mom, tell me the truth. Today the lies end in this family. Did you sign something? About a month ago. He confessed, his voice sunk low. She sent papers by mail, said they were for a bank loan to fix the roof, that you'd already given your blessing, that all that was missing was my signature because I'm the son. She said you yourself had asked her to do it. I was wrecked from work. I didn't even read them. I trusted her. I signed and sent them back. If you were in agreement, why would I doubt? I gripped the phone, not in anger and sorrow. There was the boy I had raised noble to the point of clumsiness, incapable of imagining evil. because he did not carry it inside him. Delaney knew his guilt as an absent husband, his shame at not supporting his family alone, and used all of it to put the pen in his hand and make him sign his own ruin. Cody, listen well. I never asked for any loan. I never gave any blessing. I didn't know those papers existed until a few days ago. The line went mute, and then I heard something I had not heard from my son since he was a child. I heard him cry. What did I do, Mom? I trusted her. I thought I was helping you. I left you alone with that woman, and I didn't even believe you when you told me something wasn't right. I thought it was your age because Delaney told me you were confused. Confused, I repeated. The same word always used to silence old women, confused, exaggerating, resentful. Forgive me, Mom, please. Not yet, I said, and it hurt to say it. Forgiveness is earned, son, with deeds, not words, and you'll have your chance because I'm going to need you. But from now on, not a word to Delaney about this call. You keep talking to her on Sundays, the same as always. You play the one who knows nothing. If she suspects we've spoken, it all comes down on us before it's time. Do you trust me? When he answered, his voice had something new in its steadiness. I trust you, Mom. Tell me what to do. Find out without her knowing exactly how much money you've sent her these past months. The dates, the amounts, the receipts. Keep it. We're going to need it. I have it all saved, Mom. Every receipt. I'm orderly that way. That's my son, I said, and for the first time in weeks, a small smile reached my lips. I hung up. Delaney had separated us with 2 twisted truths and a single lie, but she had made the mistake all those who lie too long make. She had told so many versions to so many people that sooner or later 2 of them would sit down and compare, and we already had. That afternoon, when she asked whether I'd thought about the papers, I answered in the meekest voice in the world. Almost, Delaney. Give me until the weekend. She smiled, mistress of the situation. She had no idea the weekend I meant was going to be the beginning of her end. That night I slept through for the first time since the hospital, because I was no longer alone. I had Brenda inside the house. I had Tyler in the field. I had my son recovered. And I had hidden in my pillow an envelope full of papers that woman believed buried forever. The only thing I lacked was to understand with help from someone who knew the law exactly what those papers said. And I knew the right person. His name was Harold Whitfield. He had been Walter's lawyer for 30 years, and before lawyer, his friend, a man of my age, honest to the point of stubbornness. When my husband died, it was he who put the farm's papers in order without charging me a cent more than was fair. We had gone years without seeing each other, but there are kinds of trust that do not expire. A woman in a wheelchair does not leave her house unnoticed, so I did not go. The papers went. I asked Brenda on her day off to take Harold copies of everything in the envelope Tyler photographed each page, and printed them in town with a letter in my own hand begging him to come discreetly, passing himself off as a coffee buyer. He came 2 days later, a Thursday, just as Delaney was off on her errands. He arrived in his old pickup, greeting loudly so the workers would hear. I've come for the coffee, Miss Phyllis. They say yours is the best in the region. Brenda showed him to the eaves and stayed watching the gate while we spoke low. Harold set his folder on the table. His face was grave. Phyllis, before I show you what I found, I need you to confirm something. Did you sign any of these documents? Look me in the eye and tell me the truth. Not one, Harold. I swear it on Walter. He nodded slowly as if he had both expected and feared that answer. Then what we have is very serious. More serious than you imagine. He drew out the first page. This is a power of attorney in which you supposedly grant your daughter-in-law authority to administer and dispose of your property. Your signature is at the bottom. Do you recognize it? I looked. My skin crawled. It was my signature, or almost. The slant of the P, the little tail of the Y, and Hollowell imitated with chilling care. But that H was not mine. Mine closes the second stroke. This one left it open. It's not mine. An imitation. A good one, but false. I suspected as much. The stroke doesn't match a person of your age with arthritis. This was a young, firm hand. He drew out the second page. And this is worse. A deed of sale meant to transfer the farm into Delaney's name for a laughable sum, a simulated sale. With the false power of attorney, she'd have free hands to sell the farm to herself. And here, he tapped a third paper, an application for a mortgage against the property with your son Cody's signature as apparent co-owner. With that money, evidently, they meant to disappear. I stared at the 3 pages on the wooden table where Walter and I had eaten breakfast for 30 years. The false power of attorney, the simulated sale, the mortgage. The whole plan laid out leave me without a signature, without a farm, without a roof, and if the accident had gone the way she wanted, without a life. Harold, if I hadn't found these papers, if I'd died in that accident, would this have worked? He took off his hat slowly and set it on the table, and then he smiled. A strange smile, almost mischievous, the last thing I expected. No, Phyllis, and here is what your daughter-in-law, for all her cunning, never took the trouble to find out. He drew out a yellowed document with a county recorder's seal from years back. Do you remember when Walter and I put the farm's papers in order shortly before he died? You were ill that season. Walter was more careful than even you knew. He didn't leave the farm simply in your name. He placed it in a trust with a clause he insisted on because he said, Harold, the day I'm gone, no one, not even my own son, can force Phyllis off this land. This land is hers as long as she lives. His eyes grew wet. It's what the law calls a life estate held in trust. The farm cannot be sold, mortgaged, or transferred while you live except by your own signature in person before a real notary with your ID and 2 witnesses. No power of attorney, true or false, can leap over that. It took me a moment to grasp the magnitude of it. When I did, a knot that had been gripping me for weeks loosened in my chest. Then these papers are worth nothing, Phyllis. Wet paper. The power of attorney is forged, and even if it were genuine, it couldn't touch the farm. No serious bank would approve that mortgage once it checked the trust on record. Your daughter-in-law built an entire castle of fraud on a piece of land that was untouchable from the start. Walter protected you from the grave 30 years later without your knowing it. I wept, not from pain or fear, but for my old man who in his quiet wisdom had foreseen that someday someone would try to tear the land from my hands and made sure they could not. It was as if he had left me hidden in a yellow paper one last caress. I remembered him then the way he had been near the end, already sick, already thin but stubborn as the day I married him. I had thought in those final months that his long afternoons with Harold and his papers were just an old man's fussing the need of a dying farmer to feel he still controlled something. I had even teased him about it once. Walter, the land isn't going anywhere. Rest. And he had looked at me with those tired eyes and said only, It's not the land I'm worried about. It's you. I had not understood. I had kissed his forehead and gone back to the kitchen. 30 years later, in a wheelchair with a forged signature on the table in front of me, I finally understood what he had been doing in those afternoons. He had been building a wall around me, a wall I could not see, would not need for decades, and that was standing now exactly when I needed it, exactly as he had promised. There's more, however, Harold said, his voice grave again. That the fraud failed doesn't mean there was no crime. Forgery of a public document, forgery of a signature, attempted fraud, and that's only the papers. If we add the buried bar and the witness that's no longer fraud, Phyllis, that's attempted murder. The word fell under the eaves like a bell. You have a strong case, but a strong case can be lost if handled badly. We can't go to the district attorney with suspicions and rage. That woman will deny, she'll cry, she'll say you're senile. So we do things right, slowly and right. He counted on his fingers. The originals guarded like gold. The bar and the broken blade recovered before someone makes them disappear. Tyler's testimony in writing, Brenda's testimony, Cody's receipts to prove the money was diverted, and the most delicate piece of all we need to identify that man Dwayne. Because if he took part in the bar, we're not dealing with a spurned woman acting alone. We're dealing with two people who plan to kill you. I nodded, fixing each point in my memory the way I once fixed the dates of planting and harvest. We'll have it all, Harold. Every piece. The old lawyer took my hand across the table the way Walter had so many times in that same place. Phyllis, I've known you 40 years. I watched you pull this farm out of nothing when everyone bet you'd give up. That woman thought she was taking advantage of a defenseless little old lady in a wheelchair. She has no idea who she chose for an enemy. I divided the work the way I once divided the labors of the harvest, to each their own in silence. That same evening, I sent Tyler to recover the iron and the torn blade, wrap them in a clean sack, and bring them to Brenda to hide where only the three of us knew. He did it at dusk with the same stealth Delaney had used weeks before. The difference was that this time the stealth worked for the truth. "What if she notices the bar is gone?" he asked. "She won't, son. She thinks that iron did its job and stopped mattering. People who think they're very clever always underestimate the details. That's going to be her undoing." Tyler's testimony I dictated to him word by word, sitting under the eaves while he copied in his clumsy hand the evening alone, the rise Delaney dragging the bar, the straw, the fear, the scream the next morning. He signed it, his hand trembling. "If she finds out before the time comes, I'm finished. They'll throw me out. With this, you stand up, Tyler, and I give you my word, the word of Phyllis Hollowell, that as long as I live, you have work on this farm. A man who conquers his fear to tell the truth never goes without a place in my house." Brenda's testimony was the broadest. The hidden virgin, the rifled drawers, the man with the good car, the sabotaged calls. She wrote it herself and signed without her pulse trembling. As she signed, she told me something she never had. "The day Miss Delaney had me hired, she insisted so much told you the owner of the farm shouldn't be doing a poor woman's chores. She chose me believing I'd be her eyes inside the house, loyal to her because she got me the position. She never imagined that I watching you break your back every day feeding everyone before yourself would end up on the side of the good mistress and not the bad one." I laughed for the first time in a long while for real. Delaney brought in her own witness. She herself planted the proof that will condemn her. If that isn't divine justice, I don't know what is. Cody's receipts were on their way. My son had gathered every record of every transfer of the past months. They added up to a figure that left me speechless. He had been taking the food out of his own mouth, and not a dollar had reached the house, the medicine, the children. It had all been swallowed by the bottomless pit of Delaney and her lover. The hardest piece remained Dwayne, and that piece once again was brought to me by Maddie. One afternoon she showed me a drawing, a house, a son, 3 figures holding hands. A woman, a man, a little girl. "Look, Grandma, this is Mommy, this is me, and this is Uncle Dwayne. Mommy says when we go away far, we're going to live the 3 of us together in a big house with a pool, and Daddy's going to stay here." I felt the blow, but it no longer knocked me down. "And does Uncle Dwayne have a full name, my love?" "Dwayne Kessler." She answered, proud to know it. "Mommy has his number saved with a little star. I saw it." That very night I passed the name to Harold through Brenda. The lawyer did not take long to find out who he was. No debt collector, a man with a record fraud, an old assault complaint, debts everywhere. A drifter who could smell money from miles away. What Brenda had overheard months back that Delaney owed him was true, but the reverse of how it sounded. It was not a debt that trapped her. It was a partnership. 2 predators who had found in my farm and my savings the perfect prey. She brought the family the closeness, the access. He brought the coldness to carry the plan to its final consequences, even to burying a bar of iron in the path of an old woman. Harold began in silence to prepare the formal complaint and spoke discreetly with a prosecutor he trusted. We agreed the proof would be handed over on the appointed day, and that on that day only, that day I would let the mask fall. Through all of it in front of Delaney, I went on being the beaten old woman. The longest, hardest performance of my life. I ate her cold leftovers in silence. I bowed my head when she spoke to me with contempt in front of the children. I said, "Yes, Delaney, whatever you say." So many times the words turned sour in my mouth. Every night I begged my own dignity to forgive me for humiliating it one more day. And every morning I reminded myself why, because the patience of an old woman is a weapon the young never see coming. On Friday, Delaney came into my room with the papers again. This time she brought no smile. She brought urgency. "Miss Phyllis, time's up. Tomorrow a notary friend is coming and you're going to sign. It's all arranged. No more let me think about it." A bought notary surely brought by Dwayne, ready to give the robbery a coat of legality. Delaney had grown careless and afraid in equal measure. The botched accident had not killed me, and she could feel me slipping further out of her grasp every day I stalled. She could not afford to wait any longer. She had to force the signature before I found a way to slip free. She did not know that no notary in the world could make valid what she wanted. But her urgency fit me like a glove. It gave me the date. It gave me the hour. She herself handed me the day of her fall. "All right, Delaney," I said with a sigh of defeat so well acted that I almost believed it myself. "Tomorrow I'll sign. I'm tired of fighting. An old woman like me has no strength left." Her eyes shone, pure triumph. She gave me a little pat on the cheek, almost a soft slap of contempt. "Finally you see sense. Tomorrow at 4, and after that you won't even know we exist. You'll get to grow old in peace. Far away, far away." It cost me nothing to imagine what she meant. A nursing home, or something worse. When she left, I drew out the hidden phone and dialed 2 numbers. The first to Harold. "It's tomorrow, 4 in the afternoon. Bring the prosecutor, bring the police. She set the date herself. We'll be there, Phyllis. On time. Hold on one more day." The second to my son. "Cody, take the first bus at dawn. Tomorrow you come home, but don't come in until I tell you. Wait for my signal. And bring all the papers." "I'm coming, Mom." His voice no longer trembled. It sounded like a man's. "And this time I won't leave you alone." For weeks, that woman had built her trap, believing herself the hunter. She had buried the iron, hidden my virgin, forged my name, poisoned my son, brought her lover into my house. And without knowing it, brick by brick, she had built the perfect stage for her own fall. Only the pen was not going to sign what she believed. The Saturday dawned clear, as if the sky too wanted to see plainly what was going to happen. Brenda helped me bathe, comb my hair, and put on the best dress I owned, the dark blue one I wore to Mass when I still walked. I did not dress to surrender. I dressed to receive. "Today is not a day for a beaten old woman," I told her at the mirror. "Today is a day for the mistress of the house." At 3:30, Tyler came to the edge of the yard with a sack of proof hidden under firewood. At 3:40, a message on the hidden phone, Harold and the prosecutor were parked around the bend out of sight, with 2 officers waiting for my signal. At 3:45 from Cody, he was at the bus stop in town 10 minutes away. I wrote him a single word: wait. The minutes between 3:45 and 4 were the longest of my life. I sat in my chair by the window with my hands folded in my lap. The picture of a tired old woman resigned to signing away her home. And inside my chest, my heart beat so hard I was sure they would hear it. I had spent weeks pretending to be weak. Now, in these last minutes, I had to pretend to be weak one final time, and then only then stop. I watched the clock on the wall, the same clock Walter had hung there 40 years ago, its hands crawling, and I prayed not for rescue, but for steadiness. Just let my voice hold. Just let me get to the end of the sentence I had rehearsed 100 times in the dark. At 4 on the dot, Dwayne arrived. I heard him before I saw him, the soft engine of his good car pulling into the yard as if he owned it. Tall, well-dressed, with that serpent smile Brenda had described. Behind him, another man with a folder, the notary. Delaney came out radiant, transformed, laughing with an ease I had never seen inside my house. For an instant, seeing her free and happy beside that man, I felt not rage, but a deep pity. She had had a good husband, a healthy daughter, a whole family, a roof. And she had traded it all for the smile of a serpent. They wheeled me to this big table where the notary spread out the papers, the power of attorney, the deed, the mortgage. Delaney stood to one side, arms crossed, triumphant. Dwayne leaned against the wall, watching me with the cold curiosity of someone studying an insect before stepping on it. "Here, Miss Phyllis," said the notary, holding out a pen. "Sign where the mark is, on these 3 pages. I took the pen. I held it a moment over the paper, and then I lifted my head slowly and looked at them one by one. I set the pen down. "Before I sign," I said in a voice that was not the beaten old woman's of these past weeks, but mine, the real one, firm and clear. "I'd like to understand exactly what I'm signing. At my age, a person gets confused. Isn't that right, Delaney? You've told my son so many times that I'm confused." She frowned. Something in my tone threw her off. "Don't play smart. Sign and be done. It's just that I have doubts. This signature here, the one that says it's me, I don't remember making it. And I have a good memory for a confused old woman." The notary looked at Dwayne. Dwayne straightened. "And this other doubt." I drew from beneath my shawl Walter's yellow paper. "It turns out this farm cannot be sold or mortgaged without my signature in person before a real notary with 2 witnesses and my ID in hand. My husband arranged it 30 years ago. So all these pretty papers you brought are worth nothing at all. Wet paper. Did no one tell you? The silence that fell was thick, unbreathable. Delaney went pale. Dwayne narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about, old woman?" he spat. "I'm talking about the fact that I know everything Dwayne Kessler." To see him take half a step back at hearing his full name was one of the deepest satisfactions of my life. "I know about the bar buried in the field. I have the iron, I have the broken blade, and I have the one who saw you, Delaney, dragging it in the dark and covering it with straw so I would fall at dawn. I know about the Virgin hidden in the shed where I found these very papers. I know about the money my son sends that the 2 of you swallow. I know you lie to him and lie to me with 2 different stories so we'd never speak. And we spoke, Delaney. Days ago we spoke." "She's lying," Delaney shrieked, but her voice trembled. "She's senile. She's making things up. No one is going to believe an old woman." "No." I drew out the hidden phone and typed a single letter. The signal. What happened next happened fast. Through the yard door came Cody. His face undone, the transfer papers crushed in his fist. Delaney froze. "Cody, what?" "I know everything, Delaney." My son said, his voice broken but whole. "The money, the lies, what you did to my mother." His eyes settled on Dwayne and something hardened in his face. "And I know who he is." And then through the front door came Harold. Behind him, the prosecutor. And behind him 2 uniformed officers. Dwayne reacted the way his kind react. He tried to run. He did not make it to the yard. The officers took hold of him while he shouted that he knew nothing, that he had only come along, that the whole idea had been hers. Delaney, hearing him hand her over, exploded. "Liar! It was you. You convinced me. You said with the old woman dead, we keep everything." And there in front of the prosecutor, in front of the police, in front of her own husband, they confessed to one another at the top of their lungs, blaming each other, sinking together without realizing that every word was one more piece for the complaint Harold already had prepared. The bought notary was arrested too. The false papers, Tyler's testimony, Brenda's signed sheets, Cody's receipts, the bar, the blade, it all passed that same afternoon into the prosecutor's hands. They took Delaney away in handcuffs. Before crossing the door of my house for the last time, she turned to me, her face twisted with hatred and fear. "This isn't over, you cursed old woman." I looked at her from my chair without rage, with nothing left she could touch. "You're right. It isn't over. It's going to end the way it should in the hands of justice. And I'm going to keep the only thing that was ever mine, my house, my land, my family. What you tried to steal, and never not for a single day, belonged to you." The door closed behind her, and for the first time in months, the heir of my house was mine again. Cody fell to his knees before my chair, hid his face in my lap, and wept the way he had as a boy when he feared the thunder. I stroked his hair. "Forgive me, Mom. I left you alone. I believed her and not you. They almost killed you because of me." "Get up, son," I told him gently. "Forgiveness isn't begged on your knees. It's earned standing every day. And you'll have a whole life to earn it here with me on this land." That night when the house was at peace, Brenda hung the Virgin again on her shelf, set her crown straight, lit a candle before her. I gave her thanks in silence. Not for a miracle. I gave her thanks for something simpler, for having given me in the worst moment of my life the right people. A maid with a heart. A boy with courage. An old, faithful lawyer. A son who woke up in time. Faith. I understood that night is not waiting for God to come down and save you. It is the strength to get up, even sitting down, and let the truth do its work. The months passed. Delaney and Dwayne faced justice. It is not for me to dictate their sentence. What was left for me was to recover my life, and that I did. Cody never went back to the city. He stayed on the farm, learning again to read the land, to prune the coffee, to rise before the sun. His hands filled with good calluses, the kind that bring pride. Tyler rose to foreman. The slow boy turned out to be the most loyal of all, and under his care the coffee field gave the best harvest in the region again. Brenda stayed with us no longer as a maid, but as what she truly was, family. And there were the children. Maddie, who laughed loud again now that there was no fear in the house, and the baby who grew chubby and healthy in our arms. There is something about that little one I want to tell you, because it marked the last lesson of this story. During the case, among the papers that came to light was Delaney's own admission thrown in Dwayne's face that afternoon, and later set down in the file that the child she carried was not my son's. He was Dwayne's. I told Cody one evening, carefully fearing his reaction. My son stayed quiet a moment, looking at the little one asleep in the crib. Then he lifted him into his arms with a tenderness that filled my eyes and said, "Mom, this child chose nothing. He didn't choose his mother. He didn't choose how he came into the world. The only thing he has is us, and we're not like her. He's my son. I've raised him since he was born. I gave him my name. I love him. Blood doesn't make a father. The one who stays does." I looked at my son holding that child, and I understood that something had changed in him that could never change back. The boy who had signed papers without reading them, who had believed a stranger over his own mother, who had let himself be sent away because it was easier than fighting, that boy was gone. In his place stood a man who had looked the worst truth of his life in the face, and decided anyway to stay and to love. Delaney had tried to break this family. Instead, without meaning to, she had forced it to become what it had never quite been before, a thing chosen on purpose every day by people who knew exactly what they were choosing. And he stayed. Cody raised those two children as his own, without difference, without reproach, without shadows. Because in this house we learned through pain what family truly means. Today, sitting under the eaves where so many evenings I watch the sun go down beside Walter, I look at my farm, my coffee, my grandchildren running among the bushes, and my son working the land his father armored for me from beyond the grave. I am missing a leg. It's true. I walk with difficulty with a cane slowly, but I am whole where it matters. I learned that many things can be taken from a woman: her health, her money, her trust, even a piece of her body. But there is one thing they cannot take while she has breath left: the dignity to rise, and the decision not to stop loving even after the world has shown her how cruel it can be. Family is not the blood we share. It is the people who choose to stay to care for us and protect us even when life turns against us. That is the only inheritance that is truly worth anything. And that one, thank God, no one could steal from me. If this story reached your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave me your like, and tell me down below which city you kept me company from until the end. Tell me what you would have done in Phyllis's place. I'll read you in the next story.